Hi friends, I'm Christine Caine, and you're listening to the Life and Leadership Podcast, where we share conversations with faith-fueled leaders from all over the globe. Hey friend, welcome to the Life and Leadership Podcast. I am so glad that you're here. Now, every time you tune in or share an episode or invite a friend to join us, you're helping build this life-giving community, and we truly could not do this without you. So we are in week 2 of our new series, The Best of Life and Leadership, where we're revisiting some of the most powerful conversations from our first 3 seasons, ones that you have told us have deeply impacted your life and leadership. So today, we're diving into the topic of calling. I've got to tell you, this is something we hear about nonstop, and it's a topic so many of us wrestle with and we wonder about. You're going to hear insights from Professor Arianna Molloy, business leader and Propel Cohorts coach, April Stallworth, and a few highlights from our listener Q&A series. So whether you're just beginning to explore your calling or navigating what it looks like in a new season, I've got to tell you, this episode is just for you. So let's jump in. Arianna, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm pumped.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm pumped too.
I know. I'm thinking, okay, just in our little banter before we got on, I thought our podcast listeners need to strap themselves in today, because I think you're matching my energy, and that is very dangerous for anybody on the other side of this. It's like, put your coffee down before we even start. But
this might be true. I was a cheerleader in high school. I can't take that out of me.
I can see it. I thought, I am in love with you as soon as I saw you. This is awesome. Okay, I just want, the listeners here to just come up to speed a bit. Just tell me a little bit, the Cliff Notes version of your story and how you've ended up. Here you are, a professor of Biola now. You didn't just wake up and there you are. How did you get to there?
Yeah, that is a story. I think the shortest version is I had no idea that I was even smart enough to go to college. In school, I was very sociable. I loved Jesus. I loved people. I had some unfortunate encounters with some teachers who didn't make me feel very smart. And so I went into college. I'm a first generation college student. So my parents hadn't finished college. They've done amazing things in their life, but I was just sort of figuring this out on my own with their help. And I remember sitting in a class with a professor named Dr. Bill Purcell, and I had some kind of passionate, convicted comment that he let me make in class. And he said something like, "Thank you, Dr. Molloy." And I had this whoa, he just called me doctor. Could I do that? And I think in college, I also felt like I could ask those why questions that no one had time for earlier. And I felt like my wings had been let out of a cage, and all of a sudden I could stretch, and it was amazing. But I didn't have a sense of what to do afterwards. I knew who I was in God as a college student, and I really knew how to be a good daughter. I didn't know what adulthood looked like. And I felt like everyone else did, but I didn't really know. Wow. So I moved back at home with my parents. I worked for a church for a year. That was not a great experience. I worked for 2 women starting a nonprofit. That was a phenomenal experience, but I was a little bit bored. And I was single, which I know is very strange in the Christian church sometimes. And so I thought, what should I do with myself? I went back and I got a master's degree. And during that time, I felt even more alive. And I studied organizational communication in the workplace and about work. And I was so fascinated with how Christians work, how they use their faith as a motivation to work well or as an excuse to not do a good job. And I thought, we cannot have this. We need to approach everything with veracity and passion and accountability and treat others well in the name of Jesus. And so I took a year off. I worked for the nonprofit that I had been working with before. And then I got bored. And I was single. And I thought,
I'm hearing a theme here. Yes. Yeah.
So I applied to some places and I got into my top choice, and it was a very rigorous program, not always friendly to faith, but I learned a lot. And in fact, my original dissertation advisor was an atheist and told me, "I don't know if people will want to hire you if you study faith and communication in the workplace." And I said, I think the places I would want to work would hire me, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I got there, but honestly, it wasn't until the 3rd year of my time in my PhD, I was walking across campus. I go into all the classrooms that I'm teaching or taking a class, and I pray over them when no one else is there, just to ask for the anointing of the Holy Spirit. And I was doing that, and I saw some freshmen walking with their parents. My heart just filled with love for them. Like this overwhelming love that I don't even know how to explain. And so I called my parents and I said, I think I'm going to be a professor. And they were like, great, because they're so supportive. And then in my journey with Biola, I saw the ad. I thought, well, this will be a good first start. And I walked on campus. And Chris, I was walking on campus in this like little junior high area that's currently being redone for the film school.
Yes.
And I felt that tapping of the Holy Spirit. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm supposed to be here.
Wow.
And there were a lot of little things that led up to figuring out how to release my own expectations and dreams. But ultimately, the Lord was gracious in letting me not only study work as a calling, but to experience it for myself, which I didn't think I would.
Okay. I'm very riveted and I want to go down 15 rabbit trails, but I'm not going to. So, okay, how long have you been teaching then?
Yeah, a little over 10 years.
So, and you still love it?
I actually try to hold my hands out with the Lord every couple years and walk around and say, Lord, is this where you still have me? Because I never want to be a closed-fisted person with a sense of calling. I still love it. I mean, it's changed. The world has changed. Even the college texture has changed. My heart for the students, I don't know how to explain it. I love them all. I love the ones who want to be there and who don't, the ones who are checked out and coming late, and the ones who are in the front and ready to go. I love all of them.
Okay, you are the dream professor. I've got like I've got a senior and a freshman right now, and so I want all the teachers to be like you. I want them to have this sort of passion. So it is something when you can actually believe that God has called you to do what you're doing, whatever sphere of life that is in. That to me is the goal. Like, I mean, and actually, Propel exists for that, to say, we are all here to do what God's called us to do, whatever the title, vocation, whatever it might be. So that makes me excited. Now, you've written a book, Healthy Calling, and I remember when our mutual friend, Dr. Joy,
Yes.
Joy Quayle, she contacts me. She goes, Chris, you have got to know, this woman, this book. And I thought, as I started to kind of look through, I thought, what a very necessary subject for us to be talking about. I've been in full-time vocational public ministry for 35 plus years. And so I think if some of us had read some of this earlier, some mistakes could be avoided, I think, down the track. But we're in a moment. It's not easy. It's not easy being a leader. It's not easy fulfilling the call of God, period. And the world has shifted. And so I think this is why I really want to talk about this. I want to know, firstly, what led you to write this book? Like, why? And why now?
I love it. So I've been fascinated with the concept of calling since grad school when I came across a secular journal. I was studying meaningful work because that was kind of my backdoor to studying faith in the workplace. I've just always been fascinated by that. Just as a secondary tangent, my parents were very inclusive of me, and they're the reason I know the love of God. They did not come from homes that modeled that, but they chose to change their legacy and with each other modeled that to me. And so at the dinner table, we would talk about work. And they would even talk about my job as a student as a job. And so I think I've always been fascinated with this idea of work and an opportunity to bring Jesus with us. It's never been a disconnect for me. But I came across somebody in a journal called the Communication Yearbook, wrote that some people talk about meaningful work as a calling. And it was like, whoa, this is... And then I just began paying attention to how much we as Christians use that term. I think sometimes we can overuse it or we use it wrongly. And I was just curious, how do people even talk about it? So my dissertation was simply, how do people talk about work as a calling? What are their experiences of this? I studied lawyers, stay-at-home parents, an NFL coach, people all over the spectrum of occupations. Both Christians, non-Christians, people who believed in the universe and their spirit talking to them. In fact, one artist that I studied, he was a guitar musician, and he said that his guitar was his caller. So it's everywhere, which, by the way, is a really cool way to talk about Jesus. If people don't believe in God and they feel called, you could say, well, who's calling you? How do you tell me more about that? So I was really fascinated by this. And just to be real clear for definitional folks who like definitions, work as a calling. I mean, as Christians, we all have the calling to love God and love others, hands down. That's our mission. But in work, it looks like something specific. And there are 4 things that it requires. The first is that it's meaningful. So I'm not just simply like turning the light switch on and off. You know, there's a meaning behind it. I could be doing that, but I find meaning behind it. That's the first one.
Sure.
The second is
sorry,
that
I just want to pause. Because I want to ask you. I'm so sorry, because I think in that I heard the story once. I can't think where I heard it, where someone went to NASA or I'm pretty sure NASA or somewhere in Florida, and they came across a janitor and he was mopping the floor, and the guy was on his way to see someone at their senior executive level, and he said to him, hi, what's your name? Whatever it might have been, John, and what do you do here? And he goes, oh, I put a man on the moon. And this is while he's mopping on the floor. Is that what you're talking about when you?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes. I interviewed someone who worked at the makeup counter of a mall, and she said, I get to make people look beautiful. And so it's less about, what the actual job is. And I think we often get distracted by that, in fact. And it's more about how we use our skill sets and our passions in our perspective. Totally. And it's not that we should just be happy with wherever we are. I think sometimes that means that we forget to examine who we are. But at the same time, I think we need to say where we are has opportunity.
Very much so.
That meaningfulness can be in any job. And people think it's only in certain jobs. It's not. Construction workers, presidents of companies, stay-at-home parents, all have meaning if they want it to be.
Okay, number 2.
So meaningfulness, that sense of calling with God, that skill set and passion. I once interviewed a nonprofit CEO, and she said, passion alone is not enough. That makes you a great fan. Passion and skill set is required. So there's the developing of skill. And I think sometimes, if someone thinks they're going to be called to be a doctor, they don't go into the operating room on day 1. They go through that training and apprenticeship. So that's that. But then here's the 4th part that I think we often forget about calling. It is pro-social. It is about other people. If we're not making a positive impact on other people, it's a great hobby. According to the criteria, it's not really a calling. Calling is about others, loving God, love others. And so I just think those things intrigued me quite a bit. Now, the thing that really captured my attention after studying that, and research shows that if you feel called, you're the most motivated at work, you're the most satisfied, you're able to withstand organizational change, people want you in the room, you're in the room where it happens, and all of those things. But more than any other people group, if you feel called, you are the most prone to burnout. Wow. And that's where my mind just kind of went, wait a minute, what? We're the most prone to burnout? And as I began doing my research over the years with that in mind, I saw that burnout from a calling is different than regular burnout. And we have to talk about that. There's a deeper level of shame and toxicity that can really corrode us in our relationship with God and with others.
Absolutely. Yes. And do we want to talk about that? Because I do. Because I think that's very, yes. So we need, and even the causes of it and why. Now I'm 58, 35 plus years. Now I'm not saying I'm, exempt from it happening, but thus far, by the grace of God, 35 years strong, of continuing to, why would someone be in that position? So here I am at 58, I'm looking at 60, still in it, still loving God, still passionate, still the same, feel every day that same sense of the calling I felt at 21, Christine, you're called to change the world. Why are some still like this at 60? And why are some not? Because we all started at 21 on the same altar calls, saying yes to the same God with the same passion and the same zeal. So what can happen that can cause one to cross the finish line and one to burn out?
I love that question. I have so many ways I would love to respond to that, but I think the first thing is if we confuse our calling with the caller, we get into trouble.
That's a great one.
If we become so absorbed with trying to figure out our calling, and that occupies our mind, and our calling defines who we are rather than the relationship with the caller,
that's great.
We get into trouble. And it's
we
so
could just
easy.
Stop this right now. I need you all to pause and press stop, press rewind, and listen to that. That alone that alone is going to help you to finish to cross that finish line. Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, keep going. But that is so powerful.
I love it. I love it. And, I am a communication professor, but I do believe calling is inherently about relationship.
Yeah.
Relationship with our caller, relationship with ourselves, relationship with the community we serve and who impact us. And so I think the healthy callings continue to exist when we don't confuse the calling with the caller. Yes. When we begin to shift just even a little bit to loving that feeling of calling, which is great. On a good day, it's like 80%. There's always that 20% that I would rather not do all the grading that I have to do, but I love my students, that kind of thing. It can move without us realizing it to usually two dark sides. One is job idolatry, where we begin to idolize our work. And one is workaholism, which is the addiction to work. And it's the most cushy, welcomed addiction that we have in Western culture.
Absolutely.
And so when we do those things, we get to that place of burnout. And here's the thing about burnout from a calling. It's not simply, I'm tired, I'm cranky, I don't like what I'm doing anymore. It's, I don't know who I am anymore.
Hey girls, it's Chris here, and I've got something for you that could completely transform your life and leadership. Now, if you've ever wondered, am I really walking in everything that God has called me to? Or if you felt like you're navigating your purpose all alone or looking for more support, I can promise you that you are not the only person feeling this way. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons that we started the Propel Women cohorts. For 5 months, you'll journey alongside a powerful group of like-minded, like-hearted, like-spirited women who love Jesus, who are hungry to grow, and who are ready to make a bigger impact. You'll get coaching from exceptional women, hands-on tools, and a sisterhood that speaks life into your calling. Now, I have seen it firsthand in these cohorts. Women stepping out with boldness, finding their voice, their vision, and their next step. It truly is lasting transformation. Now, the best part is that we've simplified the application process to make it quick and simple, just 15 to 20 minutes total to apply. So you can apply now at propelwomen.org/cohorts. Now, the deadline to apply for our next round is June 15th. If you're thinking, whether you're a CEO, a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, a student, a mother, single, married, whether you're working in a factory, whether you're a construction worker, this is for you. It's for everyone. Space is limited, so don't wait. I want to make sure you don't miss this. I'm fascinated to know, because I know so many people listening to this podcast are involved with working and are trying to navigate lots of things in life. So how did this shift in your relationship with God, dare I say almost like you actually really began one then, that was so radical. How did that begin shaping like your work? And I guess, I don't know, in that bringing creativity into your work, and just how did what was happening internally with you and the Lord begin to impact everything externally in your work life?
Absolutely. So the more I started to journey with God, I started to understand his word. I started to apply the word to me specifically. It wasn't just for other people out there, but it was for me. Once I started going back to work and started going throughout my day in the work that I was doing, it was like I had put on glasses. All of a sudden now, I could see this mission field. I could see purpose in where God had placed me in those moments, in the work that I was doing, in the level of influence that I had been kind of blind to before. I was just going through the motions. I was just getting a paycheck. I was just doing me. But now, as I got to know that God specifically had a purpose for my life, and that in every season, every place that he planted me, he wanted to use me for the kingdom and for things that were bigger than what I had seen. And so now I could start being a missionary in the marketplace. I could start taking God to work with me. I could start.
Okay, hang on. I've got to
Oh.
jump in because you are the Propel woman. This is bringing me fire because the whole of Propel was launched from the scripture in Matthew 9 where Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are, the laborers are few. He said to his disciples, therefore pray to the Lord of the harvest to send forth, that word in the Greek is ekvalo, to propel laborers into the harvest. So when you're talking about suddenly you are seeing your workplace as your mission field that God has sent you on assignment, that is the whole purpose of the Propel Woman. It's saying, look, it's not just, a Bible teacher or someone that's in full-time vocational ministry that's called. We are all called to go into all the world and make disciples. And all of us women are there in the world and we're saying, Lord, give me something to do. He's like, I'm sending you into the harvest field every day. But April, for the woman that's listening to this and she's going, okay, in my workplace, I'm not allowed to talk about Jesus, or do you want me to hand out tracts at work? What does it mean to be a witness for Jesus in a workplace, and particularly maybe somewhere where, it's not really something for you to be able to do, or even legal in some types to, you can't stand in the lunchroom on the table and start proclaiming the gospel. So what does it really look like if someone's thinking, what is it to be a missionary in my workplace?
Sure. Can you smile at folk?
Come on.
Can you listen for cues when people talk to you and you ask them, how was your weekend? What'd you do? How's your family? What's going on with you? People are waiting to talk about themselves. We love talking about ourselves. We love talking about our families. We really do. And people are just waiting to be asked. They're waiting for someone to have the fruits of the Spirit in the marketplace. They just want kindness. Can you have some grace for folks? I don't know what happened to grace in our world. Can we have some grace for folks? Everybody's going through something. And I started to ask God, Lord, just put my discernment on 10. Show me where you can use me every day that I go to work. Actually, before I leave the house, as I'm coming out of my home, as I'm driving to work, show me how you can use me. I think what was happening a lot, and still happens, is we go to work and we're not full. We go to work on empty. So you can't go to work if you're not full. So you should already be full when you get to work. You've got so much oozing out of you between the words you've heard that morning, the worship music that you had permeating in your car, the devotional you read while you had your morning cup of coffee, that you're going in full, ready for battle, just armored, ready to go to work. And so as God starts presenting people and situations and things that he wants you to affect for the kingdom, it will just be like, it's all around you. And then you start attracting believers too. So believers find believers. So then you start seeing other people and you start building an army at the work field. I have believers in my office all the time. They're just coming out of nowhere because there's something different about you that people can see in the way you come in the room, in the way you take interest in people, in the way that you respond to situations. And you'll start attracting the believers, but you'll also start attracting the people who really need Christ because they see something in you that they want. And then they start having conversations. I haven't yet, and I've been in many different secular work environments. I haven't had one person yet who's told me about a difficult situation they're dealing with. And I don't know whether they're a believer or not. And they tell me, my mom's been sick. I say, really? Tell me about that. And they start telling me. And I say, tell me your mom's name. It's Mary. Why do you want to know? I want to add Mary to my prayer list. I haven't had one person say, no, don't do that. I'm going to tell the boss on you. Let me tell you something. When your family's in trouble, when you're hurting, you'll take prayers, you'll take offerings, you'll take candles, you'll take anything, whether you believe or not. You're open to that. And God starts sending those people to you. And then I just start jotting names down, adding it to my prayer list, or I pray for them right on the spot. And so if you're open to it and you don't live in a spirit of fear, when did we become such sanctified punks? Can I say that on here?
You can say what you want to say.
When did that happen that we're so afraid in the workplace and anywhere else that we're ashamed of the gospel? I'm not ashamed. When I go out and speak, secular organizations, I've spoken at Google, Coca-Cola, Columbia. I mean, I've been all over. I tell them right out the gate, I'm a woman of faith. I'm a woman of faith. They're like, okay. And I said, I'm a woman of faith. I'm not ashamed of that. I share that. I'm not here to indoctrinate you. I'm telling you who I am. And I don't care what practice you have, but you better get a faith practice. It could be hugging trees. It could be animals. I don't care what it is, but you need something to anchor you. And then everything I talk about is based on biblical principles. Am I saying Jesus, 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 Jesus every 5 seconds? I am not. But in everything that I talk, and all my principles, and everything that I share, believers immediately recognize that it's all based on biblical principles. And it never fails. After every talk, after every training session, after every podcast, someone will say to me, thank you for sharing the gospel. Thank you for standing in your truth, rather the truth. Thank you for telling us exactly who you are. I see you, sis. It never fails.
You ended up eventually in youth work. Yeah. Was it her that pulled you in?
Yeah, I think what happened was like she just sort of said there's on Saturday nights there's a youth meeting. Now I was 21, nearly 22 at that time, so I wouldn't have thought of myself as youth. Like so in my mind it's teenagers.
Yeah,
but because I didn't understand much about a Protestant church. I didn't know. I was the person. I got saved, so whenever the church doors are open, I'm there. Like, so, it's just like, oh, okay, that's what you do. Listen, what I was doing on Saturday nights, it was a lot better that I would be going to youth group than what I used to do. So, like sometimes I'm a big believer in sometimes you got to pluck someone right out of that environment that they were into or they're going to go back to it. So I needed something else to do on a Saturday night. Let's just put it like that. So this was like, I went to and I was that person, man, whenever those doors were open, it wouldn't have mattered if it was the grandmother's meeting. I would have been at that thing because I'm like, I needed Jesus. I was so messed up. I needed Jesus. And thank God that, I got into a church that just always had something on. But she said, we are having a church cleanup day on Tuesday. So I went the next Saturday night to youth and she goes, we're having a church cleanup day on Tuesday. Now I just thought, when you get saved and you start getting into church programs, I just thought you'd do whatever they say. Like you got to understand, there was no no internet, there was no Instagram, there was no you didn't have an imagination of this is what I'm going to do. You're just going to do the next thing. So it's like, oh, well, I'm a Christian now. I'm part of this church now, and we're cleaning up now. So that's what you do. Like,
it makes sense to me.
That's it. I wasn't looking to arrive at anywhere. I thought I had arrived. Like I came to Christ. So I'm home. I've arrived.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking career Christianity. I didn't even know what a ministry was. I wouldn't have even known you could build a ministry. Yeah. I'm like, this is it. So now we're cleaning the church. So of course, out of the group of about a couple of hundred people that were there when she announced it, I was the only one that turned up on that Tuesday. And so this is how I say
everyone else.
Yeah, this is how God I'm convinced this is how God calls all of us, and who God uses is just keep showing up because inevitably at some point nobody else is going to. So God has no other options, and so you're it. And so of course, if you've only got one person to choose, they don't need to be the best or the most gifted or the most talented or you're just there. And I'm still convinced. with every fiber of my being that it is so much less to do with our ability than it is our availability. And every major invitation I've had from God has been more to do with my availability. I have never, ever, ever, not once, been the most gifted or the most talented or the best. I wouldn't be the best first choice for anything that I am doing. That's why I never feel stressed about it, because I know God put me there. And if God puts you there, God can keep you there. If you try to put yourself there, you've got to try to keep yourself there. And so as I was there and I went to volunteer for that church cleanup day, and the assistant youth pastor, who I still didn't even know anybody. I mean, I wouldn't have known the janitor from the pastor. Like at that point, I really wouldn't have. Like I knew nothing. Because the church I came from, like the priest was in robes and had, incense and candles. So unless you were like wearing your robes, I wouldn't have known that you were the head kahuna. And so I didn't know what anybody, in this one, everyone sort of wore jeans and everyone looked the same. So I wouldn't have known anybody from anyone. And he said, Christine, you're doing psychology. He goes, you're Christine Caine, aren't you? And I said, yes. And he goes, yeah, I've heard about you. And because
all good things,
all
right?
good things. And, he wouldn't have even known. I was just new, and it would have been, oh man, there's this Greek girl that just got saved and she's in church. And so, and then he said, you go to Sydney Uni, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, you're doing psychology. And I said, well, not really. I'm doing English and economic history. So basically I can read golden books and count to 10, but it's not that but I've got a minor in psych. And he goes, well, look, I just got a government grant. Our youth ministry got a government grant to start a youth center, a community-based youth center, to which I said, what is a youth center? And he said, I don't know, but I'm going on a missions trip with a senior pastor for 6 weeks, and we need to have a proposal done for this grant that we've just gotten, and a strategic plan and an outline. And because you're the only one that's at uni and you've got a minor in psychology, will you do this? So again, I'm thinking,
just because you were there.
Just because I'm there, this is what must happen. Okay, so this is God. I'm just thinking, of course, God's leading me because I'm now saved. I went to a youth group because they said there's a meeting on. And then I went to the church cleanup day because they said there's a cleanup thing happening. And now the youth pastor, who, don't forget, I come from like Greek Orthodox. So like if someone that's got the term pastor, priest, oh my gosh, they're like hearing from God. So it's like, okay, this is what the Lord must want me to do. Other people, they're praying and fasting, or they're scrolling, telling God what they want to do. I'm just like, oh, okay, this is how this must happen. God just directs you one step at a time. And so I just went. I didn't know what to do. So I went and visited every youth centre. So they're all secular, every youth centre in Sydney, and made meetings with the director of the youth centre so that I could find out, what is it that you do? What is a youth centre? What happens? I'm doing economic history and English. I don't have a social work degree or a psych degree. And so out of that, you got to understand how God's training me instantly at this point. No, now it makes so much sense. But back then, everyone's like, what are you doing? And out of that, I learned to write government grants. I learned how to speak to councils and government authorities, and how to speak to schools and teachers, and create programs for schools that were needs-based. What is it that your students need? That's where, we wrote anti-bullying programs, and programs on teaching people about abuse, and teaching people about just issues, eating disorders, teenage suicide, all of the major kind of issues, because we would, and then I would go and find out, what is happening with at-risk young people, so that the community service could help provide services. Well, God was teaching me at all the time that ministry is needs-based. You find a need and you meet it. This is not complicated. This is not rocket science. You don't need a seminary degree. I don't need to know Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic, even though I do know Greek because it's my first language. You don't need to do it's not like a career. So while everyone was arguing about what can a woman do and what can't a woman do, nobody, God was calling us to lost people. We just went out because there's lost people, and no one really cares what you do. They don't care what you call it, whether you call it preaching, teaching, educating, because there's, lost people out there. And so that's where I learned. People go, where did you learn to preach? I didn't realize I was learning to preach when I was teaching 6 times a day in a high school. And let me just tell you, teaching in a church is 10 times easier, because Christians will be nice to you. Unsaved Aussie high school kids, listen, if you say put up your hand, they're going to put up their finger if you want Jesus. They are not going to say amen, sister. They are going to say lots of 4-letter words. None of them are amen. And so that's where people go, how did you learn to be so eloquent? I'm like, sweetheart, I was school. I didn't need a reform seminary. I had
Right.
unsaved kids in high schools in Australia. That's where did you learn to hold a crowd of arenas? Oh, you can hold a class of 14-year-old teenage boys that are unchurched. I can hold an arena. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like,
Right.
this is where I'm laughing while everyone's like, I'm not getting an opportunity. I go, oh, there's plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of people that lost in schools. And it's, I just think most
Yep.
of the stuff where we're wanting a career or a title or a position, I'm like, oh, there's lots of people. There's the
Yeah.
harvest field that God's called us to. Nobody's arguing over them. Nobody's even wanting to reach, and they're the actual ones that we're called to reach. So in all of that, I was being trained. I was being trained on how to run programs. Well, today people look at A21, 19 offices, 14 countries around the world, several President's Awards, the Mother Teresa Humanitarian Award, working with the Red Cross, doing the work that we do around the world. Well, where do you think I learned to write grants? Where do you think I learned to talk to government departments? We do TEDx talks and TED Talks. And where do you think I learned to communicate to unchurched people? Well, other people were saying, you're wasting your life. Why aren't you building your church career? God was preparing me for what he already had prepared for me. He has not wasted one moment of all of those things when he was teaching me leadership and when he was teaching me faith and when he was teaching me how to believe God and how to reach the lost. Well, what is it that I do now? And, whether it's through Propel or whether it's through A21, it has a lot more visibility now. But the fact is, this is what I've been doing for 35 years. It started small, but, Zechariah said, despise not the day of small beginnings. I didn't know I was starting small. I just knew I was starting. I didn't know that was small because I didn't know this is what's happening. A lot of us, because of Instagram and scrolling, we're like, well, I just have to do this little thing now. For me, that little thing was a big thing. It just was the next thing. And what I'm doing now is just the next thing. And I'm going to look by God's grace 10 years from now and go, wow, that was little. We only had 19 offices. Wow. Oh, man, I thought that was big. That was only 19. Wow, we've only got, X amount of hundreds of thousands of women that we're reaching. Wow, I thought that was big, but that's small because we're reaching billions now so that's kind of like you've only ever got the next thing. So it's not up to you to decide whether the next thing is a small thing or a big thing. It's just the next thing that God's asked you to do. And it's up to him to multiply it and determine whether it's a small thing or the big thing. But if we would just stop scrolling and swiping and we started doing, we'd get about the Father's business. Okay, wasn't that a rich and powerful conversation around calling? It is so easy to see why these stood out to so many of you. I hope that they sparked something fresh in your own heart and reminded you that your calling doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It just needs to be faithful to Jesus. Now, if you'd like to stay connected with Arianna or April, you'll find their information linked in the show notes. And I just want to thank you again for spending your time with us today. It truly is one of the most valuable gifts that you can give us. Now, if this episode encouraged you, would you just take a moment to rate the podcast, leave a review, or share it with someone who's wrestling with their own sense of purpose? I'll see you right back here next week for more of the best of life and leadership. Hey everyone, it's Chris here. I am so excited to share something special with you today that I believe will strengthen your faith journey this summer. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed by life's uncertainties, or sometimes maybe you struggle to hold on to hope when challenges keep coming, then you are exactly who I had in mind when I wrote my devotional, Resilient Hope, 100 Devotions for Building Endurance in an Unpredictable World. Now, in this devotional, you'll find stories and biblical truth to help you develop a resilient faith, one that stands firm when everything around you is shaking. Because true hope isn't just optimism, it's anchored in the unchanging character of God. So this summer, I really want to send you a copy of Resilient Hope as my personal thank you for your gift of any amount to support our ministry at Equip and Empower. Your generosity helps us to continue to bring God's message of hope to millions of people around the globe. So visit christinecaine.com/hope today to give to the ministry of Equip and Empower. And I cannot wait to send you a copy. Together, let's build a resilient hope that thrives in every season of life.
Access more